Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your guy Rudy SKC and welcome to a brand new video. So throughout history, players have exploited holes in the rulebook to gain an unfair advantage. So today we're going to be looking at some of these instances where the players actually caused the rules to be changed. Let's get right into it.
Perfect.
Number 1. The over the backboard rule. Wilt Chamberlain is one of the most dominant players in NBA history, and he's forced many rule changes. So how it used to be was that his teammates would just lob the ball over the backboard on an inbounds play. And Wilt was taller, stronger, and more athletic than pretty much about everyone else in this era, except for maybe Bill Russell. And due to this, when his teammates just lobbed the ball up, he'd be able to easily catch it and dunk it every single time, and it was an easy 2 points. And to stop this, the NBA implemented a rule that banned inbounding the ball over the backboard, which still stands to this day. But this didn't stop Wilt from continuing to exploit the rulebook, which leads us to number 2. The free throw plane rule. Throughout NBA history, we've seen some terrible free throw shooters, most notably Ben Wallace, Shaquille O'Neal, Dwight Howard, and Andre Drummond. Shaq was so bad at free throw shooting that teams implemented a strategy called Hack-a-Shaq, where they would purposefully foul him in crunch time knowing that he would likely miss and that they could gain possession back. Andre Drummond once missed 23 free throws in a game, which is an NBA record, but right up there with them is Wilt Chamberlain. You see, back then the rule was that you just couldn't step over the free throw line anywhere on the ground when shooting a free throw. So what did Wilt do? In high school, he took 2 steps behind the line, ran up, threw the ball off the glass, jumped across the free throw line, and dunked it all the way. And this was legal back then because the rule was that you just couldn't step over the free throw line anywhere, and it didn't account for jumping over the free throw line. And I guess basketball rules didn't really account for a freak like Wilt coming in, just being able to be that athletic and jumping over the line, especially in high school. And knowing Wilt would soon be coming out of high school, the NBA and NCAA created a rule that you couldn't be over the line, on ground or air until the ball hit the rim, otherwise known as the free throw plane. Because otherwise that would pretty much guarantee Wilt and anyone else who was athletic enough to come after him free throws. And I just want to reinstate the point that he was dunking from the free throw line as a high schooler, which is absolutely insane. Now, Wilt was a dominant dunker, but one of his fellow 7-footers in the NBA caused an actual rule change as a result of his dunking. Number 3. The Alcindor rule. There's nothing better in basketball than watching someone get put on a poster. But imagine if that was illegal. Imagine if somehow our favorite part of basketball was just taken away. Back in 1976, a young freshman center by the name of Lou Alcindor was taking the NCAA by storm at UCLA. His 7'3" frame and polished post work allowed him to score at will. But I don't even think anyone could have predicted that he would go on to become a 6-time champion, 6-time MVP, go on to become a top 3 player of all time, Hall of Famer while leading the NBA in total points over a career. And now, if you haven't figured it out yet, Lou Alcindor went on to change his name to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the name we all know and love today. Now, going back to his freshman year, Kareem was so dominant once he got the ball in the post that the NCAA had to ban taking a shot when the release point was over the rim, which pretty much effectively banned dunking. Now, Kareem was so dominant that once he got the ball, he just bodied the other big man, just bullied him, and got an easy dunk, or he would use his post work to get an easy layup. And now, mind you, this was back in the 70s when dunking was a frowned upon part of the game, and it didn't make much of a blow then. And actually, UCLA's coach John Wooden actually did not like when Kareem dunked, and he said it was a disgraceful part of the game. But I mean, it's still crazy to think that dunking was actually banned in a major sport association. But the positive from this was that using the time not being able to dunk, this allowed Kareem to develop his post work even more and allowed him to develop his deadly sky hook shot, which went on to become probably the most unstoppable move in NBA history. Now, the Alcindor rule, as it was called, was held from 1967 to 1975 in the NCAA. And by about 1975, the NCAA realized that dunking would actually make them a lot more money through viewership and fans, as Dr. J was taking the ABA over by storm, and they just realized that allowing dunking would probably allow for more viewership, which would probably create more revenue for them. But I mean, all these changes happened a long time ago. Let's look at some more recent changes. Number 4, the foul rules. We all know Reggie Miller, Dwayne Wade, and Kevin Durant as some of the best scorers in the past 30 years. And we also clown on James Harden a lot for instigating contact and drawing fouls so much, and he does really over-exaggerate contact a lot. But I mean, those three that I mentioned above caused actual rule changes in that department with how they were drawing fouls. Back in the 90s and early 2000s, Reggie Miller was an assassin from three-point distance. But the thing he used to do was kick his leg out in a shooting motion to draw contact and get fouled. And the NBA deemed that this was unfair because players closing out really only had two options. They could either try and contest Reggie's shot, which would likely be a foul because they would be hitting his leg that Reggie kicked out, and that would be 3 easy free throws for Reggie. Or they could just not contest Reggie's shot at all, which would also be bad because Reggie was such an elite shooter that him taking a 3 would be money every single time. So the NBA created a rule where kicking your leg out in the motion of shooting would not only not be considered a defensive foul, but would be considered an offensive foul. But in recent years, the NBA has really loosened up on this, and they've given the benefit of the doubt to the players that it's just part of their shooting motion. Reggie Miller was really a pioneer of this, and since he's one of the greatest shooters of all time, a lot of people just copy the way he shot, and that's just how the NBA evolved. But he was really the grandfather of the foul rules, and he was able to come up with a way to draw contact that no one else had seen before, and he did it to an extent which no one else had seen before. Then came D. Wade's pump fake rule. Now, D. Wade's pump fake back in the day was so lethal that everyone in the stadium, fans, coaches, players, all included, knew that it was coming every single time, but they still fell for it every time. But to draw fouls, he used to jump into the person who was guarding him while shooting, which would allow him to get easy free throws. And obviously this was a little unfair because the defender really wasn't doing anything, or he wasn't making an attempt to foul him, he was really just jumping straight up. So the NBA made a rule where the defending player would have to jump into the shooter, just not have the shooter jump into them to be considered a foul. The last generation of the foul rules for right now came from Kevin Durant, who came up with another way to get contact while shooting. So when facing up a player 1v1, KD would just take a sudden erratic shot, and since the defensive player's arm would make contact on the way up, it would be considered a shooting foul. Now, like the previous two instances, the NBA deemed that this was unfair because the defending player really couldn't do anything if Kevin Durant was bringing his arms and locking them around their arm. So the NBA banned this by changing the definition of when a player's shooting motion actually started, which in this case meant that contact would happen before the player started his shooting motion. Now, we've yet to see any more variations of the foul rules, but I'm sure we will, and I'm also sure that the NBA will find some way to change the rules to adapt to them and ban them. Number 5, the illegal defenses rule. In the early 2000s, there really was only one dominant force, Shaquille O'Neal, the Big Diesel. See, back then, the NBA considered certain defenses illegal, where players couldn't stay at certain parts of a court on defense without an opposing player being there. So essentially, they were supposed to play man-on-man defense the whole game. But following a couple years of lower ratings after the lockout season in '99, the NBA needed more excitement, and Shaq's size was just starting to almost become unfair. And the NBA implemented zone defenses to reduce the one-on-one matchup and force more ball movement. And this helped slow down Shaq in a way. And I mean, Shaq was just too big, he was too heavy, he was too strong, and his post work was great, and he was too unstoppable. But by doing this, they actually opened up newer and more efficient officers, which is pretty ironic because By implementing zone defenses to stop Shaq, you come up with newer and more efficient offense. And I mean, the Spurs were the first big team to revolutionize this increased amount of ball movement, as we saw Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, and Tim Duncan, who became a much better ball distributor at the end of his career. They took full advantage of that, and if you look at the latter finals appearances, we can really see how much they relied on their ball movement. And this also really paved the way for the Warriors to start their three-point revolution, which took the league by storm, and pretty much everyone now is shooting threes. And a lot of that is because of the ball movement started because of the zone defenses being implemented. Alright guys, that's going to wrap it up. Let me know who you think had the biggest impact on the rules in NBA history down in the comment section below. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.